So my theory that I just wrote a couple days ago for the first time on a comment on Facebook with the Craig Madrid. He had posted an article linking to the CBC News article about the doping in the Yukon Quest, and it reignited the conversation. And a couple weeks ago on my own Facebook, I had mentioned to my own circle of network of people how I thought that there was the independent third party who had done the metabolism test right when Dallas Seavey finished in 2017 in second place to his dad's championship team. They had done the metabolism test, and thus they had access to the dogs. Now, whoever it was, they had needles, they did a blood sample, they probably doped the dogs. This is the only time in the history of any top finishing team that finished Iditarod and was able to push that test back 6 hours and not do the drug test right when the team finished. Highly irregular, and it's not a coincidence that this is also the one time in the history of the race where a top finishing team is coming up as a testing positive. So my idea, I feel very strongly it's the likely scenario, is that whoever was responsible, a group of people, whether it was a separate organization, whatever, we need to know this. We need the CVs to come forward. We need to clarify who were the people, organization, etc., that was responsible for that metabolism test that was administered right when Dallas finished second in 2017. Whoever those people were, they had the needles, they had the access to the dogs, and no one was watching that shit, I'm sure. Second place, hoopla at the finish line, 2017. They injected the dogs and administered tramadol with an injection, and then 6 hours later, when the ITC did the test, it came up positive. I am positive that this is what occurred. Now, I don't know how I didn't get it before this time, in terms of that light bulb going off, and I don't know why anyone didn't put that magnifying glass on what is going on with this, and how could the Iditarod Trail Committee possibly have granted Dallas's request, and did Dallas get paid by the metabolism people? Did he how could the Iditarod Trail Committee allow that to happen, where they pushed that mandatory doping test back 6 hours when a team would finish? Only time this has ever happened in long distance sled dog racing where that has been pushed back, and then someone had some other test going on right when they finished. And this is also the only time where we had a top finishing, competitive front of the pack, top finishing team come up positive. It's not a coincidence. So whoever is there at that finish line in 2017 when Dallas finished, it has those needles and has access to those dogs, whether there's multiple people, whether it's a separate organization, whether it's someone working for the CVs, blah 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 blah. This third party, whoever's doing this, those people are probably the ones responsible for doping the dogs. And if you have needles and you're going in there, not everyone's watching that shit closely. Go get a bloodwork done at a lab. As a human, I'm sure not every, there's a high percentage of people that aren't watching what's going on when they're getting that blood drawn, especially in the context of a competitive second place finish, especially Dallas right behind his dad, and having already have this prearranged. So, and the likelihood is so high that we should pursue this, and journalists, law enforcement should pursue this with the intention of, if this can be ruled out as something that didn't happen, it could be ruled out. But unless we bark up this tree, unless we go down this trail and explore this possibility, then we would never know. And here it is 3 years later. I think we want, as a community in Alaska, and as the broader sport of dog mushing and outdoor adventure enthusiasts, and I think we want resolution. I think we want conclusion. And if there's a way to hold the responsible party, if it's not CB, if it's not the trail committee, if it's not, some native person in the village, blah, 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 blah. If it's something linked to like the PETA, who have a big economic campaign against Iditarod, it's not out of the realm of possibility that Dallas was gullible. He made an arrangement with a third party, or, to do this metabolism test. Maybe he got paid, maybe he was arranging for it, and not everything was under the magnifying glass, and they doped the dogs. It's not out of the realm of possibility. Mitch Dallas's dad is in the newspaper, and he's on social media complaining about people within his kennel, his own employees, going around with video cameras and doing other things. So clearly mixed loyalties, hard to believe, in the context of that stuff going on in his kennel, etc., hard to believe that this is not within the realm of possibility that this third party, whoever has the needle and has access to the dogs in 17, when Dallas finished second, it's hard not to believe that is the likely scenario, that those are the people who doped these dogs, Iditarod dogs. And, to cause this big thing in the media, to basically joust Dallas out of the sport, and Craig Madrid was like, online, he was like, hey, it's more likely that Dallas himself doped these dogs, right? And I go back to our conversation when this happened with Craig, and I don't think that's the case. I think that Dallas is so well positioned, just like a Matt Failer, who's coming from the Boozer program and kennel, has a very great high earning job in tourism in the summer, economically, has a strong, supportive family. Or again, another one is Pete Kaiser. Those ingredients, in having the numbers and having the access to really phenomenally great bloodlines of dogs, great economics behind you. It's the numbers, it's the dollar signs. It's not a shock for Dallas to go out there and win those races. It's not a shock for Pete Kaiser to win. It's not surprising that Matt Failer put together, some great competitive finishes, first place and then second last 2 years in the Cusco. Look how many times Martin Boozer and Roan has done that. The training, the program, the bloodlines, it's not surprising. It's hard to get those economic pieces together. It's hard to have that economic, logistical, that organizational piece for young people. But if you have a family supporter, if you're linked to a big successful program in kennel that has sponsors and done that, and you have great jobs and you have money coming in, the pieces of the puzzle are there. So it's not a shock. So for someone to say, well, Dallas is open, I don't think so. I think one of Dallas's brothers with a veteran team of competitive dogs. Tyrell even did it. He was in the top 20 back then. But, one of Dallas's brothers would have been very successful too. Maybe they wouldn't have won 4 times in a row or whatever. But, it is true that Dallas is young, dedicated. He was set up for success. So to again, suggest that he's doing the drug thing, I think it's unlikely. I think it's more likely that that this third independent party, that this people who want the sport gone, have this big economic campaign, are responsible for this, and they were intelligent, and they duped Dallas, and they also duped the media, Alaska, the sport of dog mushing, and they doped the dogs. They were there, maybe they had someone else do it for them, but, they were the ones there, and they doped the dogs at the finish in 2017 when they were doing the blood work, the metabolism test. They had the needles, they had access to the dogs. They injected the tramadol, not to hurt the dogs, but so that when the ITC did their test 6 hours later, it would show up as positive. It was a criminal thing, though. It's a criminal thing because it was an attempt to smear the Dallas Seavey and smear the sport. Now, if my suggestion and my line of thought is wrong, I would like it to be proved wrong so we can move on and we will know that what I'm suggesting is incorrect. But to do that, we need the Seaveys, and we need the people to come forward, and we need to figure out who were the people who did that metabolism test. Is it a third-party group? Was it employees of the Seaveys? Who were the people in Nome in 17, right when that team finished, who had those needles and had the go-ahead, the green light to have access to those dogs and to do and to administer this test, or to draw the blood or whatever? These are the most likely people to have doped these dogs. And these people, if they did dope those dogs, are criminally, they are criminally responsible, and they committed a crime. So they need to be held responsible. So the media, I think the journalists, I think the law enforcement, they need to bark up this tree. They need to go down this trail. And if it's not the case, let's rule it out. But we won't be able to rule it out if we can't have the Seaveys come forward and tell us who it was that administered that metabolism test, in terms of drawing the blood, and had the permission from the Seaveys, permission from the Iditarod Trail Committee to do that in 2017 in Nome at the finish line. And then 6 hours later, those dogs tested positive. Whoever had access to those dogs doped those dogs. That's my impression that that's a likelihood.